לכל בית ישראל, בגלה, בגלה, ובזמן קריב, ויאמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם ולעולמי עולמי, יתברך, יתברך וישתבח, ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה, שמי דקודשה בריחו לעילה, מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, תמירן בימה, ויאמרו אמן. ברכו את אדוני המבורך, ברוך אדוני המבורך, לעולם ועד.
We read together at the top of page 33. As you taught Torah to those whose names I bear, teach me Torah too. Its mystery beckons, yet I struggle with its truth. You meant Torah for me. Did you mean the struggle for me too? Don't let me struggle alone. Help me to understand, to be wise, to listen, to know. Lead me into the mystery. Baruch Ata Adonai, Ohev Amo Israel. Hear, O Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai is one. Blessed is God's glorious majesty forever and ever. You may be seated, and we continue with the Ve'ahavta on page 36.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם אלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
We continue on page 41. Sing the song of men and women joined in understanding and respect, the song of God's miracles, an earth protected and cherished, a gift for our children and the generations to come, the song of a land once ravished by war, now quiet and content, her soldiers home to leave no more, the song of a world redeemed, the song of peace.
Ravu vanecha, bokei
Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Adonai, help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lie down in peace and rise up waiting to do your will. Baruch atah Adonai, הפורס סוכת שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל ירושלים. I invite you to please rise if you are able for the Amidah on page 46.
Adonai, Temple-Tifereth, yagid tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'koneh Hakol, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיה הכל אתה, רב להושיע. משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיה הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מחמוך בגבורות ומדום לך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיה הכל.
אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלע. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. You are holy, your name is holy, and those who are holy praise you every day. Baruch atah Adonai ha'el hakadosh. You may be seated. We continue on page 61. We read together at the top of the page. Grant us peace, your most precious gift, O eternal source of peace, and give us the will to proclaim its message to all the peoples of the earth. Bless our country as a safeguard of peace, its advocate among the nations. May contentment reign within our borders, health and happiness within our homes. Strengthen the bonds of friendship and fellowship. Plant virtue in every soul, and may the love of your name hallow every home and every heart. Praised are you, Eternal One. Baruch ata Adonai, hamevarech et amo Israel bashalom. We pray silently.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. And Shabbat Shalom to those who are at home watching us. Shabbat Shalom to you wherever you may be. It really is a special moment for us now to be here. We are about to celebrate the holiday of Sukkot. The high holy days are just behind us. The seasons are turning. This is the week wherein in the Middle East we're expecting rain to come in, and it somehow works. It somehow fits. We are seeing the change of season here too. And this is around the time we wrap up our reading of the Torah. We wrap up the reading of the book of Deuteronomy and get ready in these weeks, these 2 weeks that are coming up, to wrap up the book of Deuteronomy and to return to the book of Genesis. And today we read a Torah portion that is 1 chapter long. The Torah portion of Haazinu, the poem of Haazinu, which is 1 chapter long, chapter 32 of the book of Deuteronomy. A relatively long chapter, but 1 chapter long, and mostly a poem. And there is something remarkable about this poem. There's something that is unique about it. And there is something that is so noteworthy about it that I thought we would perhaps speak about it today. This 1 chapter, this poem, this Torah portion of Haazinu, is effectively a microcosm of the whole Hebrew Bible. In 1 chapter, in 1 poem, the author, the magnificent author-redactor of this piece, captured absolutely everything. Now, that's okay. That's all right. We can speak back. It's okay. Now, I will say to you, not only is it a microcosm of absolutely everything in the Hebrew Bible, it is also a microcosm of the 5 books of Moses. It is a moment in the context of which something of the 5 books of Moses is captured. Think about this for a moment. Already in the book of Genesis, Abram goes down to Egypt, descends to Egypt. Egypt is not only something that we are introduced to in the book of Exodus. Egypt we're already introduced to in the book of Genesis, with Abram, our patriarch, with Sarai going down to Egypt. They go back to Egypt. Isaac and Jacob have their own travels and travails, but we start out with the experience of Egypt, and by the way, not a positive experience in Egypt for Abram and Sarai in the book of Genesis. The book of Exodus, the children of Jacob go down to Egypt. By the end of the book of Deuteronomy, the last generation of people who had known Egypt is now passing away. In other words, Egypt has dominated almost our entire corpus of the 5 books of Moses, all the way from the book of Genesis to the very end of the book of Deuteronomy. And even in the desert, all of those people who had emerged out of Egypt always want to go back to Egypt. And now these people are dying off, and we are going to be left with something that is new and that is unknown. And something similar occurs here in chapter 32 of the book of Deuteronomy and this portion that we read of Haazinu. What is it that the author here captures in Haazinu? First of all, infancy and youth. We start out with an introduction that praises God and that establishes God as the source of justice and the source of goodness and nourishment in the world, for us to move into us, human beings, being young, being defenseless, being in need of nourishment, being in need of protection, and being taken over by God, covered by God's wings, as if covered by an eagle's wing, captured on the back of the eagle and flown away to be nourished not only from the land, but in the most extraordinary of ways, somehow suckling honey from a rock. After this notion of us being protected and nourished and grown and somehow cherished by God, we move on to a next section of this Torah portion, of this chapter, wherein we grow strong and fat and powerful and forget God. And now we are all powerful. We can do whatever we like. We don't need God. We don't need this protecting force of ours that's going to shelter us and protect us and nourish us. We can do this for ourselves. Now it's all about us, which is the following third section of the Torah portion of Hainu, of this chapter. That's right. And then comes the fourth element, God's abandonment of us, the punishment, us feeling alone, us somehow feeling that God has departed from us knowing that we are somehow punished, a sense of isolation, of vulnerability, of fragility, which leads at the end to the passage that addresses Moses' own death. Moses' own death, as in Moses having to go ascend up that mountain like Aaron and be collected onto Moses' foremothers and forefathers. In other words, through this one chapter, everything, absolutely everything, every stage of life, every sentiment of life, the goodness and the crisis are all captured. The goodness, the protection and the sheltering, as well as the isolation and the abandonment and the punishment. Youth, old age, birth, and death. Everything is in this one chapter. And Moses ascends the mountain where he's told, now you go out and die like Moses and be collected to your foremothers and forefathers. Now, we recall Psalm 24. And we know what it means to go up the mountain. We think to ourselves, on the basis of Psalm 24, who could possibly go up God's mountain? Mi ya'aleh behar Adonai, mi ya'amod behar kodsho, neki kapayim uvar levav. Who is able to go up God's mountain? Who might be able to ascend that mountain of God? A person who has entirely pure hands and in a whole heart, who's never carried the name of God in vain, ever. Who could possibly go up the mountain of God? And yet, there is this notion here of Moses ascending the mountain. And we think about that ascension of the mountain, the last act of Moses. We can imagine the ascension of the mountain. We can imagine every breath being difficult. We can imagine hardly being able to speak. We can imagine every movement being painful. We can imagine the difficulty of the treacherous mountain and the ascent of the treacherous and difficult mountain. But what we are left with at the very end of the Torah portion of Hainu is hope. And the hope is that at the very end, after we have sinned, and after we had been abandoned, and even after Moses goes up the mountain, God will remember us. God will somehow come back. We will somehow be reunited. A new generation will come. And even when we cross the promised land, though it is not quite as straightforward as the promised land where everything is just going to go well, crises will ensue and follow. The hope will not die. The hope will remain with us, all in one chapter, all in the poem of Hainu. And so, as we prepare to end our reading of the book of Deuteronomy, and we read this extraordinary poem, this microcosm of the whole Hebrew Bible, and really the whole of life, let us at least take in that notion of hope at the very end of this poem. That even as we see Moses' back, even as we experience the heavy, heavy movement and breathing of the treacherous ascent, what is left for us is hope. May this be God's will for us this Shabbat and every Shabbat. And let us together say, Amen. Amen. At this point in our service, our minds turn to those who are in need of healing, who are in need of hope, who are in need of perhaps greater faith, who are in need of our support. And so I ask you at this moment to mention the names of those whom you are thinking about who would benefit from a prayer of healing. And so, as my hand passes over your section of the congregation, I'm going to ask you to mention their names so that we may pray on their behalf.
Alan Lerner.
To these names we add the following that you have shared with us: Michael Chisling, Scott Davis, Robbie Elson, Amelia Hegarty, Maddie Jefferson, Alan Lerner, Richard Moore, Betty Pickus, Bob Shippey, and Julie Waldstein. Let us together turn to page 253 and join in the Mishaberach.
We continue now in our prayer books on page 282, and I invite you to rise for the Aleinu.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
You may be seated. We continue now in our prayer books on page 292 as we prepare for the recitation of the mourner's Kaddish. When cherished ties are broken and the chain of love is shattered, only trust and the strength of faith can lighten the heaviness of the heart. At times, the pain of separation seems more than we can bear, but if we dwell too long on our loss, we embitter our hearts and harm ourselves and those about us. The psalmist said that in his affliction he learned the law of God. And in truth, grief is a great teacher when it sends us back to serve and to bless the living. We learn how to console and comfort those who, like ourselves, are bowed with sorrow. We learn when to keep silence in their presence and when a word will assure them of our love and our concern. Thus, even when they are gone, the departed are with us, moving us to live, as in their higher moments they themselves wish to live. We remember them now, they live in our hearts, they are an abiding blessing. We think now of our loved ones whom death has recently taken from us, those who died at this season in years past, and those whom we have drawn into our hearts with our own. We think especially on this occasion about members of our congregational family whom we lost during this past week, Alan Abrams, Dorothy D. Friedman, and we think as well of those who have been laid to rest during the past 30 days. Mark Bauman, Janice Kahn, Jerry Gilbert, Helene Greenwald, Selma Kaufman, Lillian R. Markowitz, Nicholas Serrano, Marcia L. Unger, Helga M. Gleiser, Jewel Goldstein, Maureen Christel, Brandon Mitchell Starkoff. And we take into our hearts those individuals whose yahrzeits take place at this time. Bert Abrams, Joseph I. Abrams, Adelaide E. Auerbach, Della Z. Auerbach, Louis Balanso, Abe Bauer, Henry Blaugrund, Ruth Helen Blum, Molly Weinberg Bremson, Phoebe Brenner, Harvey Carl, Jerry Cott, Geraldine Arnson Dworkin, Maurice Elson, Tobias L. Felber, Carol Flanick, Sarah Fox, Emmanuel Friedman, Agnes N. Fries, Bonnie Lynn Gladstone, Marcus D. Gleiser, Marilyn Glick Glosserman, Abe Goldberg, Walter A. Goldsmith, Gertrude Gombacy, Julius M. Gombacy, Eva Fishman Gould, Irving L. Grand, Ida Green, Arthur Greenfield, Irving J. Haber, Kitty S. Haber, Sylvia Haver, Henry A. Hollander, Ella Jaffe, Lauren S. Kendis, Emma B. Klein, Evan Krieger, Wilma Kersner, Joseph Lader, Edith M. Laurie, Ben J. Levetter, Stanley Lerner, Joseph Levine, Lady Nora Lawando, Everett E. Loeb, Lucille Mandel, Randy Main, Jacob Kachka Morgenstern, Mimi Price, Emma Reese, Philip Sachs, Dr. Sandy Hilton Schiffman, Isabel Dettelbach Schnabel, Shirley Joseph Schock, Celia Schoenfeld, Rose Markey Schultz, Bernard Siegel, Hermina S. Smith, Carrie Smolka, Nora Stein-Sapir, Morris Strauss, Samuel R. Weingarten, Rose Klein Wintersteller, Irene Gross Wise. If there is anyone who would like now to mention the name of a loved one whose name has not now just been read, or perhaps was read but read incorrectly, please take this opportunity to mention those about whom you are thinking. Zichronam livracha, may their memories ever be our blessing. At this point, I would like to invite those who are observing the Shiva period, the first 7 days after the death of a loved one, if you wish to please rise. Those who are observing the Shloshim period, the first 30 days after the death of a loved one, please rise. Those who are observing the Yartzeit, the anniversary of the death of a loved one, as you wish, if you will please rise. And now, as a caring congregation, let us all rise as together we sanctify the name of our God with the words of the Kaddish found in our prayer books on page 294. As we say together, Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, v'yalma divrach irutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon of yomechon, v'chayedech al beit Yisrael, v'agala v'zman kari v'yamru amen. Yehei shemei rabbah mevarach le'olam alamei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei dekudashah barichu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran v'alma v'yimru amen. Yehei shalom rabba min shemaya v'chayim, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru. Oseh shalom b'mromav, huya aseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yamru amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort all the bereaved among us, and let us say together, amen.
Amen.
You may be seated. Rabbi Cohen in his Devar Torah emphasized the idea of hope. And though we know that life often assails us in ways serious and in ways not so serious, and sometimes it is difficult for us when we're confronting difficulties and dilemmas and worse, to maintain, to sustain our sense of hope. And that is one of the reasons why we follow the Mourner's Kaddish in memory of our beloved deceased who have passed from our view. We follow it with the Shehechianu, where we turn from mourning and to hope. And so I want to mention somebody who is celebrating at this point, Connie Berland, Mazel Tov to Connie, who celebrated her 100th birthday at Wiggins on October 6th. Connie has been a member of the temple for 3/4 of a century. She's the mother of members Joyce and Eric Wald, grandmother of members Sarah and Brad Coven, David and Abby Wald, and Abby and Mark Glick, as well as great-grandmother of 7. Connie, Mazel Tov. We think about you. We love you. We're delighted that you arrived at this milestone birthday, and we wish you many more days and months and years of health, and you know you are always in our hearts. At this moment, let us do something that moves me, and so I'm in a soft way imposing it upon you, and that is to close our eyes for a moment and along with our busy calendars and activities which oftentimes consume us, to step back just for a moment and to think about the blessings with which we have been endowed. Let us sing the Shehechianu together.
Hey, can I share my Shehechianu moment?
Oh, indeed.
Can I share my Shehechianu? Oh my goodness, Shehechianu moment.
Okay.
We celebrated the marriage of my daughter Tanner to Joseph Frazier this weekend.
Mazel tov. We're so delighted.
Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam
Shehechianu v'kimanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. We're going to conclude our service with the singing of Angelo, Hainu. You can find the words in your prayer books on page 322.
Can we do Adon Olam instead?
We have a small correction. We're going to sing Adon Olam instead, and that's on page 321, so you're already there.
Adon Olam
Asher malach b'terem Azai melech shemo nikra.
La 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 והוא אחד ואין שני להמשילו להכבירה בלי ראשית בלי תכלית ולא העוז והמשרה לה 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 יה לה 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 יה לה 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 יה לה 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 יה לה 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 בידו אף רוחי בעת ישן ויעירה ואם רוחי גוויתי אדוני לי ולא יירא לי 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 לי
As we know, wine gladdens the human heart, and so as we leave our service, I hope with joy in our hearts, let us recite Kiddush together.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם בורא פרי האופן ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר קידשנו במצוותיו ורצה בנו ושבת קודשו באהבה וברצון הנחילנו זיכרון למעשה בראשית כי הוא יום תחילה למקרא קודש זכר ליציאת מצרים כי באנו בחרת ואתנו קידשת מכל העמים ושבת קודשך
Chaim. So good. Let's celebrate and be thankful for our bounty.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם
המוציא
לחם מן הארץ. אמן.
Adonai Ozle Omo Yitain, Adonai Varechet Amola Shalom. May the Lord give strength unto our people. May the Lord bless our people and all peoples with the blessings of shalom, of peace. Amen. Shabbat Shalom.
Amen.